Okay, so a few days ago on my TikTok, I posted a video talking about how I'd like to become a Minecraft YouTuber and how I have no talent for it. A few days later, a player by the name of Michus invited me to this SMP called the Urvala SMP. A SMP where you can choose species, and it's mainly a non-scripted lore server with nations and a bunch of different rules. I decided that since I, given have no ideas for content creation, should probably join this SMP. So this was my first day on the Urvala SMP. Now, the first thing I did, obviously, was I chose a species called Pyroth, which gives you particles under your feet and gives you the ability to smelt and cook stuff when holding them in your hand. And also gives you fire or lava immunity. However, this comes at the price of the fact that you cannot get into contact with ice, snow, or water without taking heavy damage. This also includes water splash potions, which do damage equal to harming one, water buckets, pretty much anything related to water. Because of that, I was spawned in a biome that had the theme volcanoic and fiery, kinda. However, the downside of having to be spawning in this biome is that there are no trees, so the first thing I did was travel a pretty long distance to get myself some said trees. However, before I did that, I tried to grab the spanner, but I think the server rules may have blocked that, or they had some kind of plugin preventing me from grabbing the banners. I ended up sidetracking and decided to go meet up with my friend Michus, the person who invited me to this SMP to begin with. After all, I figured that if they invited me to the SMP, they also most likely would be willing to team with me before my other teammates appears. On my way over to Remedis, one of the nations, I found someone who had temporarily taken camp and took some rotten flesh to eat as food from them. However, this fuck-ass phantom ended up ruining my day, and I had to restart my journey all over again. And there I was, fighting for food and fighting for my life, even though I could not fight. After having gathered some wood, I started going mining because, again, I don't need a furnace. I can just cook everything and smelt everything with my hands so that I would have some armor. But unfortunately for me, everything was looted. I'm not joking. I checked so many caves and I barely found any iron. Okay, so plot twist of the century. You are, in fact, able to mine the banners. I don't know why I was so stupid at the time and thought I couldn't, but I could, and I just kept it on me. After a while of exploration, I came across this house, but instead of raiding it, I assumed the person was broke and I decided to just move on with my day. However, this won't be very plot relevant later on in the video. Either way, after a while of exploration, I came across this pillar and killed the dog that was hidden inside of it. Sorry to whoever the dog belonged to. It's just, I didn't really care all that much at the time, and I don't think I care now either. After, fighting for my life, countless of times, and somehow still managing to die each and every time, I was starting to go crazy. Like, I could not take it anymore. This biome made me hate myself. But luckily for me, I ended up finally getting into what I'm assuming was supposed to be a plains biome. And I found some trees, more wood, and something that isn't a volcano biome. But no matter what the case was, I started to gather some wool because I needed a bed and I was planning on making myself a house somewhere around here. I did notice, though, that it looked a little bit too weird, and it looked very detailed. I then came to realize that I just stumbled upon what I'm assuming was an empire, and considering that I had the time for it, I had nothing better to do, I decided to look around it and see what they had. However, I will admit I was mainly aiming to steal something or, maybe explore and enjoy the scenery. Because you can't lie, this is pretty impressive. Coming across someone's house, I decided to take a quick sneaky peek inside and, maybe see if they had anything. Unfortunately for me, all these people were broke and they had nothing that I could use to my benefit. So instead, I decided to steal their banners because I thought that it would be really nice to have on my shield. And you can't lie, it was a pretty tough shield. I mean, just look at it. Whatever the case, I ended up finding this really beautiful flat ground area where I could make myself a house, but unfortunately for me, it was surrounded by water. However, I didn't care. I was planning on helping a teammate log on the next day, so I figured I'd make us both a house. I went around the area and explored a little bit, trying to steal some more materials since I couldn't provide for myself. However, unfortunately for me, I didn't find anything of value. But unfortunately for me, it was starting to get pretty late in my time, so I figured I would add some finishing touches to my house and call it a night. The next morning, as I logged back onto Urvala, I sadly came to the conclusion that my house had been griefed while I was asleep. But there was no time to grief my house. It wasn't even that pretty anyway, so I just went and met up with my friend Michus, the one who invited me to this SMP, and they ended up giving me some gear so that I wouldn't, have to be dying. Since I didn't know who burnt down my house, I wanted to get revenge. So, Michus took me to Remedis, which was led by the Queen Ari. Now, Ari is an old friend of mine. I used to play with her on a different server apart from Urvala, so we were on pretty good terms and we got on pretty well. Although I was having my fun in Remedis, there is one thing. The whole reason why I joined this server was because I wanted to terrorize its people. And in order to do that, I would need some way better gear since, let's be so honest, my armor was on garbage durability and I had literally no materials whatsoever. Before leaving Remedis, I decided I want to leave a lasting impression by giving them a parting gift as something to remember me by. Even though I would never admit it, I kind of wish Ari went with me. But she didn't, so I ended up traveling with Michus instead. This is Peter. He is kind of like Ari's royal bodyguard, you could say, or that's how he behaves, because he's killed me several times, and if I'm not mistaken, he's a Glacian. Whatever the case, I gave Ari a parting gift, and then I decided to start making my way far away from Remedis. This was because I assumed that the center of the world was already completely explored, and if I want to find diamonds, I would have to make it far out. Before anything, I went and decided to go fishing since it was the simplest way to gather food without having to go and look for sheep or cows or something to kill. Either way, after I made my way away from Remedis, I came across these little towers, which I'm assuming were a nation or a future nation, but I figured I should add them into the video considering they look really pretty, and credits to the builder, because they look really, really good. Anyway, I decided to travel using a flying machine since it would be way more efficient, but unfortunately for me, I ended up falling asleep, and if you know how that goes, let's just say I'm lucky the owner didn't catch me in the act. But after respawning, I found this really weird chicken farm and I decided to just let all of them out just for the sake of, pissing off the person who used to live here. Sorry, not sorry. I also ended up running into one of the owners, British TV, And turns out they owned that house that I raided at the very beginning of the video. But I pretended as though I didn't, and there's not much to say here except for the fact that they're a really big fan of Redstone. Over here, it was just me admiring the shaders, the graphics. It looked really nice, but I wanted to do something that isn't fooling around. I wanted to do something that I am good at. Something that isn't always fooling around or being an idiot. Something where people would be impressed. But it wasn't the time to think about that, because now I had to go and pick up my friend whom I'd invited to play on the server with me. So the first thing I did was I crafted them some armor, and afterwards we also went mining. Now, despite all of that, even though yes, we went traveling and we did a bunch of other stuff on the server, I wasn't interested, and it seems like my friend had to log off a while after that. So, even though I knew it was against the rules and I had nothing to do, the overworld was completely looted, there was nothing interesting here, I decided that I would go to the Nether. Now, something about this server is they put ancient debris in the overworld. And I didn't have a diamond pickaxe, so I went back to Remedis. Remember Peter, the plot-relevant character? I went over, and I asked him if I could borrow his diamond pickaxe. I had to lie to him. I felt kind of bad. But he was kind and he gave it to me. This was because I would need something to be able to mine the obsidian. And since I had no diamonds of my own, I needed this. But I don't break a promise, and I did end up returning it, so don't worry about that. Obviously, I would take Michus with me. Not only did he know the server better, but it was great to have an ally by your side as you were traveling. I had acquired the obsidian that I needed for the Nether portal, and now it was time to go and return this pickaxe to its rightful owner. Now, initially, I thought that they blocked off all of the teleportation from the server, so I figured that if I used a flying machine to get out of the world, that they wouldn't have blocked off that area. So, here I was with Michus, going very far, just so that we could make this portal. Whatever the case, Peter saw us and he tried to shoot us down using a bow and arrow. And lucky for me, he didn't hit any of his shots, because if he hit even one of them, I would have been dead. I was on 1 heart. And we made our way, slowly and surely, one step at a time, to the point that the Minecraft sun was starting to go down. As we were making our way, we got threatened and then kicked out of another nation because apparently we weren't supposed to be at that mountain over there. But I'm gonna spare you the troubles. It didn't work. As much as we tried, it didn't work, but I didn't give up and I tried again. This time by myself. Until the server owner just teleported to me and I had to explain myself. To summarize this conversation for you, they told me it's not allowed and destroyed my portal and then just crit me with their axe and called it a day. But I wasn't gonna give up. I was gonna keep trying, because if you give up, you'll never succeed. And being the smart person I am, I found out how you can bypass this. Let me explain. If a normal player tries to go through the portal, it won't let them through. However, if the player throws an item through the portal first, it's going to disappear. This is because it counts as being in creative mode in a sense. So the game will be tricked into thinking that you are in creative mode, and it will immediately let you go through the portal and let you go through into the Nether. Now, the owner was online, so I immediately logged off out of fear. When I logged back on, I decided I would try to, start a black market until I got killed by a ghast. And I was praying that the owner didn't see the chat message pop up in chat, because otherwise I would be cooked. Luckily, he was way too blind to notice, so I just kept going, trying to get illegal items or items that were only accessible in the nether in hopes of maybe, just maybe, getting netherite upgrades and planning on selling them in the overworld for, gear. But then I noticed I wasn't the first one to be here, and as I suspected, the server owner teleported to me, and I got in trouble. Honestly, I couldn't save myself, and since I don't have this conversation recorded since it was over Discord, I'll summarize it for you. To put it shortly, they told me that the reason why the nether was blocked off was because they didn't want other people getting potions which would enable them to get abilities that are exclusive to other specimens. Now, I personally didn't really care that much because I'm just me. But whatever the case, I ended up telling him that I didn't intend to, do anything bad, and I asked them why the nether is blocked off to begin with. He told me it was to avoid people from, getting potions, because potions would ruin the entire point of species since they all had individual abilities that were obtainable through potions. And I told them I wasn't intending on getting any potions. I really just that was a big lie. I was planning on selling blaze rods, and I was completely responsible for everything. It's all my fault, I admit that. But either way, you can't blame me, okay? You can't get diamonds because everything is gone, and getting any kind of gear was impossible. And to make it worse, the server owner had a little shop where you could only buy stuff using diamonds, okay? And I'm poor. I could not buy anything because I didn't have any diamonds. I had to literally borrow all of the stuff that I had from other people. But afterwards, I did end up getting banned, and I don't feel bad for, anything because the server owner was. I just didn't really. I don't know. I don't like the server owner because they also gave people a warning for trying to defend me. And it's their server, their rules, but at the end of the day, what happens already happened and you can't change the past. So instead of worrying about stuff that you'll forget about in a few years, just live in the moment and look forward to the future. Thank you for watching my Urvala SMP experience. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Princess Xylophone out.